to Deep Sleep Stories. Thank you to everyone who's been listening. If these stories help you relax or fall asleep, a short review, comment, or sharing the podcast with someone who might benefit is a simple and meaningful way to support the show so that we may continue to offer it for free. Now, take a slow, gentle breath and let's begin tonight's story.
Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories, a quiet place where your day can gently fade away as you listen to the tale of the softest winter scarf. As you settle in, this story will wrap around you like a warm, weightless blanket, guiding your thoughts toward rest and dreams. Take a slow, easy breath in and let it fall out again. Feel the surface beneath you supporting your body. Your hands can soften, your shoulders can grow heavy, and your jaw can loosen as the night gathers quietly around you. Somewhere in your room, there's a soft glow, perhaps from a small lamp or the faint light from outside. Picture that glow as it pools like honeyed gold, then slowly dims at the edges, as though the air itself is tucking you in. The sounds around you grow muffled, like footsteps in fresh snow, and nothing is urgent anymore. Nothing needs to be done. Not now. Not here. With each breath, imagine breathing in stillness and breathing out the day. In and out. Thoughts can drift through the mind like wandering snowflakes, landing for just a moment before they melt and slip away. There is nowhere else you need to be, nothing else you need to hold. The story ahead is gentle and slow, set in a small winter town where a scarf is woven from more than wool alone. It is woven from kindness, quiet magic, and the hush of falling snow. Let the images rise softly in your imagination, and if they blur or fade as sleep approaches, that is perfectly all right. The story will go on without you. It is happy to watch over you as you rest. Far to the north, beyond forests of evergreen and silver birch, there was a town that spent most of the year quietly wrapped in snow. The houses were built low and sturdy, their roofs thick with white, their chimneys breathing little clouds of smoke into the pale sky. Lanterns hung from doorways and along narrow streets, casting halos of amber light on the snowbanks. In this town lived a weaver named Elin, whose little workshop sat at the corner of a cobbled square. Her windows were always fogged from the warmth inside, and if you pressed your hands against the glass, you would feel the faint vibration of her loom. Elin was known for making blankets that held heat like sunlight and mittens that never let fingers grow cold. But most of all, she dreamed of creating the softest winter scarf anyone had ever worn. Each morning, Elin rose before the pale winter dawn and lit a small blue candle in the center of her workroom. She believed that the flicker of that flame woke up the threads and whispered comfort into the fibers she would weave. The loom waited by the window like a quiet wooden friend. Bundles of yarn were stacked nearby in shades of cream, frost gray, and gentle sky. Outside, snowflakes drifted down in slow spirals, kissing the glass with tiny patterns that vanished as soon as they appeared. The world was hushed. In the square, the baker arranged loaves of dark bread in his window, the librarian swept a thin trail through the fresh snow toward the little library, and the bell in the tower rang once in the stillness, a soft silver note that hung in the air. One winter the snow came early and did not seem eager to leave. The sky stayed soft and white as if it had been wrapped in wool. People pulled their scarves higher, their hats lower, and walked with little bursts of cloud pouring from their lips. Elin watched them from her window and thought of how the cold still crept into the gaps, the tender spaces between neck and collar, between wool and skin. She wanted to make a scarf so soft that when someone wrapped it around their neck, they would feel as though they were being embraced by a gentle, loving winter itself. No scratch, no sting, no heaviness, only warmth and the feeling of being cradled. She had tried many yarns. She had spun wool from the fluffiest sheep in the nearby hills. She had blended it with threads of fine cotton and even a few strands of shiny silk. Her scarves were warm and beautiful, but still, when she pressed them to her cheek, she could feel the tiny bite of the fibers. Not yet, she would sigh and hang the scarf by the door for a villager who needed it. One evening, as twilight gathered like a blue shawl over the town, Elin closed her shutters and banked the fire. A soft wind rattled the window panes, not fierce, just insistent, like fingers tapping on the glass. She paused, listening. The wind seemed to hum, a long, steady note, almost like a voice that had forgotten the words to its song. Elin pulled on her old cloak and opened the door. The square was empty. Snowflakes drifted in the air, turning in the glow of the lanterns. The wind swept past her, curling into her workshop, carrying with it a breath of pine, distant hills, and something else she could not quite name. It felt like a memory of being wrapped in a thick, soft blanket as a child, the sound of a lullaby sung low and close to her ear. The candle flickered, then steadied. Elin watched the flame as the wind circled her room, stirring the yarn on the shelves. Threads lifted just a little, like grasses in a gentle breeze. Then, as if it had seen what it needed, the wind slipped back through the doorway and into the night. Elin blinked, her cheeks cool from the air. On the table beside the loom lay a small, unexpected thing. A single snowflake that did not melt. It rested there, clear and bright, its pattern delicate and complete. It shone faintly like starlight trapped in ice. She reached out, expecting it to disappear at her touch, but it simply tingled against her skin, cool but not cold. As she held it, the snowflake stretched, lengthened, and thinned into a glimmering filament, finer than any thread Elin had ever seen. It floated above her palm, weightless as a sigh. The weaver's heart fluttered. She understood, without knowing how she knew, that this shimmering thread had been given to her by the winter wind. It was woven from quiet, from the hush between snowfalls, from the gentle part of cold that made cheeks rosy and eyes bright, without biting too deep. Carefully, Elin carried the thread to her loom. She wound it onto an empty spindle where it shimmered softly in the candlelight. It looked fragile, but when she brushed it with her fingertips, it held. Strong, yet softer than breath. That night she fell asleep in her chair, the fire whispering in the hearth, and the new thread gleaming faintly beside her. Dreams came, light and drifting. In them she walked through a forest where the snow hung in the air like suspended music, and the branches of the trees were wrapped in scarves of cloud. In the morning, the thread remembered the dream. It glowed slightly brighter, as if pleased. Elin decided with a calm certainty that this would be the beginning of the softest winter scarf. She could not make the scarf from the winter thread alone. There was not enough of it, and besides, she knew that softness came not only from material things, but also from the feelings woven into them. So she set out to gather more than wool, more than color. She would gather moments of gentleness. She visited the hillside farm, where the sheep spun their coats of creamy wool. The flock was calm beneath the pale sky, chewing the quiet air, their breaths rising in small clouds. Elin knelt beside the kindest of the sheep, an old ewe with wise eyes and a soft, patient gaze. The farmer helped her collect tufts of the ew's fleece, combing it with slow, careful strokes. The wool was warm from the animal's body, carrying the faint scent of hay and winter sun. As Elin held the wool, she thought of all the nights the ewe had stood between the lambs and the wind, all the mornings she had walked out into frost without complaint. She whispered a thank you into the fleece, and in her hands it seemed to grow a little lighter, as if it had heard. From the baker, Elin received a ribbon of pale yarn, dyed with steam from freshly baked bread. It carried the memory of crusts cracking, of butter melting, of hungry hands reaching with laughter and joy. From the librarian, she was given a spool of thread the color of old pages and soft ink, infused with the feeling of stories whispered in lamplight. She gathered a strand from the scarf of the woman who watched the town's children as they played in the snow, her scarf worn thin at the edges where small hands had tugged at it. The woman smiled as she snipped away a length, saying that she had more than enough warmth to share. Elin spun the strand into her growing bundle of fibers, feeling it pulse with echoes of giggles and rosy cheeks. Piece by piece, her collection grew. A little touch of dusk blue yarn from the bell ringer who climbed the tower steps even in storm and snow. A cloud-soft thread from the pillow of the innkeeper who left extra blankets on the beds for travelers she had never met. Each person offered something small and simple, given freely, colored with the quiet kindness of their everyday lives. Back in her workshop, Ellen lit the blue candle and began to work. The loom sang its wooden song, a gentle clack and sigh, as she passed the shuttle back and forth. She wove the winter wind's thread through the wool of the kindly ewe, letting the shimmering filament drift between the warmer fibers like moonlight on water. The other threads followed, each one carrying its own story, its own softness. As the scarf grew, it looked almost ordinary. Cream and mist gray with the slightest sheen of silver when the light touched it just so. But when Elin brushed it against the inside of her wrist, she felt a warmth and weightlessness, unlike anything she had ever known. It was as though a comforting presence had leaned close and wrapped her in a quiet embrace. The days slid by in their patient winter way. Snow fell. Lanterns were lit and extinguished. Children traced patterns in frosted windows with their fingertips. Elin wove, and the scarf lengthened across the loom, slowly, steadily, like a snowfall that never hurried. Sometimes as she worked, the winter wind returned. It tapped lightly at her shutters, stirred the curls of wool, and circled her shoulders. Each time the scarf shivered almost imperceptibly, the fibers shifting as though making space for another breath of silence, another whisper of snow. The thread of frozen starlight lengthened a little more, as if the wind was feeding it secret stories from distant mountains. At last, on a night when the sky was as clear as polished glass and the stars felt very close, Elin lifted the finished scarf from the loom. It pooled in her hands like liquid light, yet when she laid it across her arms, it settled with a gentle, reassuring weight. She ran it over her cheek and smiled, her eyes shining. There was no scratch, no prickle, not even the slightest roughness. It was softer than any cloud she'd ever imagined. Softer than the inside of a whispered wish. She draped the scarf around her own neck. The sensation that flowed through her was not only warmth, it was the feeling of standing beside a hearth after coming in from the cold, the feeling of being known and welcomed. The scarf smelled faintly of bread and pine, of snow and old books and lanolin, all blended into something gentle and whole. Elin stepped outside, the scarf snug against her throat. The air was sharp, but it could not find a way in. The square was quiet, lit by the soft glow of lanterns and the pale wash of moonlight on snow. The bell in the tower gave a single note, a slow, silver chime that seemed to ring in her bones. She looked up at the sky and thanked the winter wind, but the scarf was not meant to be hers alone. She had woven it for the town, for whoever needed it most, though she did not yet know who that would be. The answer came with the dawn. In the morning, a traveler arrived, trudging into the square, with a small pack on their back and a weariness in their step. Their coat was sturdy but thin, its edges frayed. Their scarf had been left behind, somewhere on the road, given perhaps to someone whose need had felt greater at the time. Their cheeks were chapped from the wind, and their eyes held the glassy, distant look of one who had walked a long way through cold and quiet. Elin watched from her window as the innkeeper hurried out with a warm drink, as the baker pressed a heel of fresh bread into the traveler's gloved hand. The traveler smiled gratefully, but still, a shiver passed through their shoulders, a small, involuntary tremor. Elin knew, with the gentle certainty that had guided her all winter, that the scarf had found the person who needed it first. She wrapped the soft scarf around her arms and stepped into the square. Snow creaked softly beneath her boots. The air held that particular stillness that comes just before sunlight spills over the roof lines. Wordless at first, she approached the traveler and held out the scarf. For a moment, the traveler hesitated. It was a beautiful piece, clearly made with care. They opened their mouth to protest, to say they could not possibly accept such a gift. But the scarf seemed to answer before they could speak. It reached, in its own quiet way, toward them, its fibers stirring like a cat, arching into a gentle hand. "Please," Elin said, her voice as soft as the snow. It was woven for someone who has spent a long time in the cold. The traveler's eyes shone. Slowly, carefully, they lifted the scarf and draped it around their neck. The moment the fabric touched their skin, a change passed through them. Their shoulders dropped a fraction, as if a hidden weight had been lifted. Their breath came easier, no longer curling tight and shallow in the cold air. The color rose in their cheeks, but it was not the sting of frost. It was the flush of coming home to warmth. In their mind, memories stirred. A kitchen hearth from childhood, a parent's arms, the echo of laughter on winter evenings long ago. The scarf seemed to remember every moment of comfort it had been woven from, and it offered those memories back in a language beyond words. The wind drifted through the square, soft and curious. It lifted one end of the scarf, teasing it playfully, then settled, satisfied. The traveler closed their eyes for a heartbeat, feeling the warmth seep into every chilled corner of their being. When they opened them again, they looked at Elin with grateful wonder. "I do not know how to thank you," they murmured. "You already have," Elin replied, though she could not have said exactly why she felt that way. Something in the scarf seemed calmer now, as though it had fulfilled a promise. The day passed in its gentle way. The traveler rested at the inn, sharing small stories of distant places, of roads that wound through endless fields and over quiet rivers. In the evening, they walked through the town, the scarf wrapped close, its ends trailing softly over their coat. Wherever they went, people noticed the way the scarf seemed to soften the air around them. Children reached out to touch the fabric and giggled at the way it felt, like something that was both there and not there, solid yet weightless. Even the most stoic of the townsfolk found themselves smiling when they saw it. The scarf did more than keep out the cold. It listened. It listened to the quiet worries that people did not speak aloud, to the tiredness around their eyes, to the invisible bruises left by long days and long years. It did not judge, did not try to mend or fix. It simply wrapped a little tighter, offered a little more warmth, as if to say, "You are safe here for this moment. You can rest." One evening, as snow fell in feather-like flakes, the travelers stood at the edge of the square and looked toward the hills. The road called to them again, gentle but insistent. They had further to go, places yet unseen, people yet unmet, but they also knew that they carried something now that would make each step softer, each night's sleep a little deeper. Elin walked out to join them, her boots crunching in the snow. "The scarf will remember this place," she said, "and wherever you go, it will carry a piece of our warmth with you." The traveler nodded, moved. They did not know that the scarf also carried the warmth of their own gratitude, their own quiet strength, now woven into its threads, alongside the kindness of the town. In the days that followed, the scarf traveled farther than any of them could have guessed. It crossed frozen rivers on narrow bridges. It rode in carriages lined with straw. It shared campfires with strangers who became friends for a night, passing stories back and forth like steaming cups of tea. Each time someone weary sat beside the traveler and confessed in a halting voice that they were tired, the scarf seemed to stir. The traveler would gently unwrap it and offer it to them for a while. As they wore it, their shoulders eased, their words softened, and sometimes tears that had been held back for a very long time fell quietly, not from despair, but from relief. The scarf listened to it all. It absorbed the warmth of those small shared moments, the glow of flames on faces, the low hum of lullabies sung to restless children under unfamiliar roofs. It became more and more a tapestry of peaceful evenings and safe shelters, of kindness offered and accepted. Sometimes, as they drifted towards sleep, they would imagine that the scarf was humming a lullaby, not in notes or words, but in the gentle, steady rhythm of its fibers, a song of looms and winter winds, of kind hands and shared bread, of long roads that led back, always to some feeling of home. And so the story of the softest winter scarf unfolded. Not in sudden events or grand adventures, but in countless quiet nights, in breaths that deepened and slowed, in shoulders that relaxed by inches until a whole body could finally rest. Now the story grows softer. The snow outside the imagined window falls more slowly. Each flake drifts and wavers, taking its time as though the air itself is sleepy. The world is wrapped in a muffled hush. Footsteps fade, doors close with gentle clicks. Somewhere a kettle sighs. Somewhere a log settles in a fireplace with a tiny sleepy crackle. Inside the room of your own rest, the light has dimmed, the edges of objects blur and soften. The bed or the couch or whatever is holding you feels a little deeper, a little more willing to cradle you. Your body may feel heavier now in a pleasant way, as though you are being drawn closer to the center of the mattress, to the center of comfort. Breath flows in. Breath flows out, slowly, quietly. In the distance of the mind, far from the surface of thought, the weaver's loom falls silent for the night. The traveler draws the scarf up around their shoulders and closes their eyes. The winter wind curls itself into a gentler form, like a cat at the foot of a bed, no longer restless, only keeping watch. Everything is all right. The road is safe. The town is safe. You are safe. The threads of the story loosen one by one, letting go of their shapes, their words, their images. What remains is only softness, the feeling of a scarf around your neck that is so light you barely notice its weight, yet so warm that no chill can reach you. Let that imaginary warmth spread through you, starting at the throat, flowing across the shoulders, down the arms, into the chest, the back, the legs. Let it settle especially gently around the heart, where worries sometimes curl up. The scarf of the story wraps those worries, not to push them away, but to soothe them, to say, "You have done enough for today." Outside, the snow continues to fall in silence. Inside, the breath continues to rise and fall. Thoughts slow like a traveler who has finally reached a welcoming door. They pause on the threshold, then curl up just outside, content to wait until morning. There is nothing more the story needs to do now. It can fade, leaving behind only its softness, its warmth, its quiet promise that comfort is always possible, always waiting, like a scarf on a hook by the door, ready to be wrapped around you whenever you are cold. Rest now, dear traveler of many days and many thoughts. The night is patient. The world can wait. Let the softest winter scarf of your imagination hold you gently as you cross the drifting boundary into sleep. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.